Before we begin, a few words from the author, because the backstory itself is worth your attention. He works as a hotel administrator. One time, he had only 8 hours before his next shift, and he was allowed to spend the night right there at the hotel. He chose room 120 simply because he liked it. That night, nothing supernatural happened, but something about those empty corridors in the silence of the night hotel stayed with him, and he wrote the story you are about to hear. He edited it during a night shift in that same hotel. And here's what matters: everything related to the place, the description, the atmosphere, the surroundings, is completely real. This hotel exists. That room exists. Only what happened inside is fictional. At least, that's what the author believes. All links you might be interested in are in the description. Make yourself comfortable. We begin after midnight. Here are your keys, please. Your room is on the 7th floor, number 782. A dark-haired young man handed the keys to an elderly couple. "Where is the elevator?" asked the old woman. "Right behind you, ma'am," he replied. The couple turned around and called the elevator. It was Friday, 3 p.m., the busiest time of the day. The young man, named Jonas, was working his regular shift at the reception. Besides him, his colleague, Elena, was also on duty. To be honest, the relationship between those two wasn't great. "Hey, Jonas," Elena called out. "Yes?" he replied. "Did you forget the main rule of a receptionist?" she asked sarcastically. "We never say the room number out loud. You're a smart guy, right? You should understand. Someone could overhear the guest's room number, follow them, and then, boom, a body, police, interrogation," she continued with a sly tone. Yeah, I forgot. Sorry," Jonas replied, confused. The girl made a dissatisfied face and continued working. This was his first job at a hotel reception, and actually his first job ever. After finishing college, it was hard for him to find something suitable. But thanks to a recommendation from his school principal, he got hired at this hotel. Overall, he liked the job. He enjoyed talking to guests, using his knowledge of 3 languages, German, English, and Spanish. There were many positives, except for one thing: the team. From the very first day, Jonas felt like an outsider. His colleagues didn't like him from the beginning, although he never understood why. Almost 3 months had passed since he started working there, but he still couldn't reach even a neutral relationship with any of them. Every shift with any colleague made him feel uncomfortable. From the very first meeting, things didn't work out between him and Elena. The woman, in her early 30s, reluctantly trained the guy and expected the impossible from him. She always gave him complicated and sometimes completely unnecessary tasks, and whenever he failed something, she would immediately report it to management. One time, Jonas told her about his relationship and his breakup, to which she replied, "I'm very happy for that girl. She's clearly happier without you. I wouldn't even talk to someone like you in real life if we weren't colleagues," she said with a disgusting smile and an even worse voice. Jonas clenched his teeth and stayed silent. "The manager wants to see you," Elena said. Those words pulled Jonas out of his thoughts. A lump formed in his throat. He never liked hearing that sentence. In 90% of cases, it meant he messed something up, and was about to be scolded. The other 10% meant the manager needed something from him. Either way, nothing good was waiting for him. He walked to the manager's door and knocked. "Come in," a cold male voice answered. Inside, Jonas saw his manager, sitting behind the desk. His name was Antonio, a large man in his 40s, wearing glasses, with a balding head. The office smelled unpleasant. The air was heavy, suffocating. Empty cigarette packs and half-empty energy drink cans were scattered across the floor. "Sit down," Antonio said, pointing at a chair. "How can I help?" Jonas asked as he sat down. Sign here." The man pulled out a sheet of paper from under the desk and pointed to the place where he needed to sign. Jonas looked up at the top of the page and froze. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Termination." "But," the boy tried to speak, but the manager interrupted him. "I'll be honest, you don't fit into our team. No one who works with you speaks well about you. You constantly make mistakes. You keep apologizing, but you don't improve. I have the impression that you either don't want or simply can't understand what we expect from you," he finished. "Antonio, this is my first job." "My first experience at a reception," Jonas replied nervously. "I've never worked in a hotel before, but I studied for this profession, and I'm happy to work in it. That's not enough. Maybe you're good with our hotel software, but as part of the team, you've failed." The man paused briefly. "Since you live in one of the staff rooms, I'm giving you until evening to pack your things and leave." The manager opened a can of energy drink. "Well, I'll let you slide. You don't have to pay for parking. Consider it my farewell gift." "But I don't even have anywhere to live," Jonas exclaimed. "You know that. We agreed I would work here and live here at the same time." "Not anymore," Antonio replied firmly. "We'll pay you for this month, but as of today, you no longer work at this hotel. You can give your room keys to Elena." He finished. Tears filled the boy's eyes. For him, it was a brutal blow. After graduating college, he had moved to this city under the condition that he would live and work here. His parents and friends lived in another city, 2 hours away. He had nowhere to go. After signing the termination papers, Jonas took off his badge and left it on the table. Without saying a word, he walked out, slamming the door. Before calling the staff elevator, he turned around to look at the reception. There stood Elena and Antonio, who had just stepped out of his office with an energy drink in his hand and a cigarette between his teeth. They were laughing, watching him leave. "Hope your heart stops from those energy drinks," he muttered under his breath and stepped into the elevator. After that, everything felt like a blur. Back in his room, he kicked his nightstand a few times out of anger, hurting his leg badly, throwing off his uniform. He collapsed onto the bed, burying his tear-soaked face into the pillow. For him, this was the end, the collapse of all his plans, the destruction of his dream to build a career in the hotel industry. He cried loudly a few hours later as the sky grew darker and the weather turned worse. He had already packed all his things. For the last time, he looked around the room and closed the door, going downstairs to get his car keys and pass. He ran into his now former colleague, Elena. "Oh, are you leaving already?" she smiled. I hope you enjoyed your stay at Boutique Hotel. The moment she finished speaking, the keys to his room came flying straight at her. Startled, she stepped back and shouted something after him, but he didn't even turn around. It no longer concerned him. He didn't care anymore. He inserted the key into the ignition, set the route in the navigation to the city where his parents lived. He was living now in the capital of Austria, Vienna. His parents were in a small town near the border with Slovakia, at least a 2-hour drive. And right now, in his condition, he didn't want to go there. He just wanted to sit somewhere, drink coffee, and think about what to do next. While waiting at a red light, he searched on his phone, coffee, and drove to the nearest cafe on his way, as if on purpose. It started to rain. Visibility got worse, and he began driving slower. I really don't need to crash into someone and pay for damages, Jonas muttered under his breath. As he kept driving, scenes from his now former job kept replaying in his head. He wasn't a bad worker. He just cared too much about every little mistake he made. Unfortunately, every mistake was noticed and put on display. Every time he came to work, there was always a note addressed to him. Those notes were left on the desk where all his colleagues could see them. Not only did they reluctantly train him, they also gladly reported every mistake to management. They laughed at his failures, why they disliked him so much. No one knew, maybe because he stood out with a spark in his eyes, with energy and enthusiasm among colleagues who had worked there for over 5 years and hated everything and everyone. His stories about school, his good grades, interesting moments from guests, no one ever listened. He always got the same response: shut up and work quietly. You have arrived at your destination. A voice came from his phone. The parent turned into the parking lot in front of a cafe, or rather, in front of a hotel. It was a hotel with a restaurant inside. After parking, Jonas grabbed his phone and stepped out of the car. In front of him stood the Bella Hotel. The hotel had 6 floors. At the very top, there was a glowing sign, Bella Hotel, visible from kilometers away. It shined so brightly, the hotel stood next to a beautiful Gothic church. From the guest rooms, there was a stunning view of that church, even in weather like this. The hotel looked warm and welcoming. Jonas even smiled slightly, looking at the building and the church beside it. From one hotel straight into another, he thought, and quickly went inside to avoid the heavy rain. Inside, it was warm, soft lighting, red carpets, elegant decorations, wall clocks, leather sofas, paintings, and portraits. At the reception, there were brochures, concert flyers, and city maps. Since Jonas still wanted coffee, he approached the reception desk to ask where the cafe was. Behind the desk, a young man greeted him. Good evening. Hi. Sorry to bother you. Could you tell me where the cafe is? I'd like to grab a coffee. Straight down the corridor, the man replied. After thanking him, Jonas walked to the cafe. He was greeted warmly, seated at a table. He ordered a cappuccino. While it was being prepared, he opened a job search website and started looking for receptionist positions. In other hotels, there wasn't much good. Salaries, working conditions, locations, all of them unattractive and inconvenient. He finished his coffee and asked for the bill. Looking outside at the heavy rain. He imagined the road ahead and clenched his teeth. I still have to call my parents and tell them everything, he said quietly. He checked the time, took a deep breath, and stood up. It was already 7 p.m. He wanted to reach his parents. By 10, he passed the reception again, but this time something caught his eye, a sign on the desk. "We are hiring reception staff, full-time." He hadn't noticed it when he first came in. It simply didn't catch his attention. Now, he stepped closer and began reading the conditions. While he was focused, the same receptionist approached him. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes, please. Do you have a business card for someone I could talk to about this job? You're lucky. My manager, who conducts interviews, is actually here right now. Would you like to speak with him?" he said, smiling. Jonas didn't expect that. He scratched the back of his head, hesitating. He looked unpresentable, sad, angry, exhausted. "Well, okay," he replied, unsure. "But I don't even have my resume with me." The receptionist smiled, waved his hand, and walked away. A few minutes later, he returned with his manager. It was a middle-aged man with a warm, infectious smile, wearing a blue suit. He immediately approached Jonas and shook his hand. "My name is Florian. I'm the manager of Bella Hotel. What's your name?" "My name is Jonas. Nice to meet you." They shook hands, firmly. "Well, Jonas, let's go to the lobby and have your interview." "Right away, just like that?" Jonas asked, nervously smiling, trying to hide his confusion. "I like when things get decided immediately," Florian replied, and pointed to a place where he could sit. "I assume you were just passing by and got interested in this vacancy." "Yes, that's right," Jonas answered. "I had coffee in your restaurant. I was looking for jobs online, and on my way out, I saw the sign and applied." "I see. You also like getting straight to the point," Florian smiled. "I'll start with a simple question. Have you ever worked at a reception?" "I worked until today," Jonas began, and he told the whole story about his job at Boutique Hotel, since everything had been building up inside him for hours. He spoke in detail about how he wasn't liked by the team, how he tried to become friends with everyone, but no one accepted him. On the contrary, they started mocking him about his duties, which he actually did, but his colleagues and manager picked on every small detail about how he was kicked out of his room and how it felt awkward to go back to his parents, who lived far away and had long gotten used to the idea that their son lived independently. This monologue lasted 20 minutes. Florian even asked a waiter to bring a jug of water because Jonas was speaking non-stop and his throat was drying out. After listening carefully, the manager invited him to the reception desk. Jonas followed him, and when he stood in front of the computer, he recognized the same software he had used just earlier that day. "Are you familiar with Protel?" Florian asked. "Yes, I literally checked in guests using it today." "Show me how exactly," the man insisted. Jonas confidently demonstrated everything. He knew. He navigated the booking system quickly and found all the needed information. The manager watched him with a smile. "Make a reservation for one night," he said. Jonas nodded and quickly created it. "Under what name and which room?" Reservation under the name Jonas. Room 120, Florian replied. Jonas hesitated. Are you expecting someone named Jonas? He asked, unsure. Listen, you've impressed me, the man said. It's raining outside. It's dark. And you have a long drive ahead. I suggest you stay in our hotel tonight. For free. I'll tell you about the job. And in the morning, you can decide if you want to work here or not. Jonas was speechless. The offer was tempting and unusual. But why for free? I can pay for the room. Every employee has the opportunity to stay for free. So they understand what we offer to our guests and evaluate the rooms themselves. But of course, you can refuse, Florian replied. Jonas thought for a couple of minutes, realizing that in his condition and in this weather, it really would be better to stay. I agree, he finally said. Then go, grab your things from your car. I'll be waiting here. The boy smiled and went to get his few belongings. Outside, the rain was pouring heavily. He quickly grabbed his things and slammed the door shut. His yellow Ford remained parked in front of the hotel, watching how the rain was washing away all the dust and dirt from the car. Jonas smiled. Well, at least I'll save money on a car wash. Back inside, Florian called him, and together they walked toward the room. On the way, the manager explained the working conditions, the salary, which was already higher than at boutique hotel, the shifts, the workload. Overall, there was nothing Jonas hadn't done before. Of course, there were a few differences, but Florian promised to explain everything. We're not a modern hotel. We're an old-fashioned one, and we try to preserve that atmosphere. Elderly guests come here because they like this kind of service. It reminds them of their youth. Jonas listened carefully and realized he liked it. They walked through the corridors. The manager showed him various artifacts that the hotel preserved. For example, a registration form signed by Sigmund Freud. When he stayed there at the beginning of the 20th century, Jonas didn't even notice how they reached room 120. Florian handed him the key. The key itself was old-fashioned, a small tag with the room number hung from it. Jonas hadn't seen anything like that in years. After you, Florian smiled. Jonas opened the door. The room was spacious. At the entrance, there was a hallway with a large wardrobe. A beautiful red carpet covered the floor. To the left was the bathroom. As he stepped inside, a large bed came into view. Above it, the ceiling was decorated with elegant ornaments. Next to the bed, there was a sofa. By the window, 2 armchairs and a small tea table. Opposite the bed hung a TV. Wow, escaped from Jonas. Florian smiled and invited him to sit at the table. Jonas placed the key on it. Do you like it? Yes, very much, he replied, shyly. I've slept in this room too. There's a tradition for all new employees. Before starting work, each of us has to spend a night in this room. Why? Jonas asked. As management says, it helps us feel the atmosphere of the hotel before we begin. They talked for a few more minutes. Jonas asked to be woken up at 8 a.m. Florian nodded and walked toward the door. He suddenly stopped. In the drawer, you'll find a book about the hotel. I recommend you read it carefully, at least up to chapter 3. In the morning, tell me how your night went. Jonas wished him good night and turned toward the window, no longer paying attention to the sounds from the corridor. He was lost in his thoughts. At that moment, the manager left the room, locking the door and taking the key to room 120. With him, Jonas curiously explored the room, unpacked his things, and put his phone on charge. He felt a good mood and a genuine interest in the book Florian had recommended. Inside him, a spark ignited hope and happiness. Could it really be that I got this lucky? Everything was more than perfect. The offers online were terrible, and here, such a coincidence. I should thank my navigator for bringing me here, he said. He took a shower and lay down on the soft bed. Finally, a bed bigger than a 90 by 180 cot. He stretched out, arms and legs wide, and smiled. Outside, the rain was pouring. No cars passed anymore. It was the perfect atmosphere to read. He took the book from the drawer and started reading. Overall, it was very informative. It told the history of the hotel, how it was built, how many rooms it had. Many famous people had stayed there. Some even started or finished their novels in that hotel. One director filmed a scene in the hotel lobby. Interesting, but it made him sleepy. After finishing chapter 2, he raised his hand to turn the page, but fell asleep faster. The book slipped from his hands and landed open on the page. It read, Chapter 3, The Secret of Room 120. The bedside lamp suddenly went out. His sleep didn't last long. After some time, he felt very cold and woke up, trying to understand where the cold was coming from. In the darkness, he couldn't see anything. He tried to find his phone, but it wasn't on the nightstand. Damn it, it must have fallen between the bed and the nightstand. He got up, moved the nightstand, but found nothing. Confused, he reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. He felt a bit nervous, but still tried to stay calm. In a couple of minutes, my eyes will adjust to the darkness, and I'll be able to see something, he thought. And that's exactly what happened. Only Jonas saw not what he expected. The room, familiar to him, had changed beyond recognition. The first thing he noticed, the chairs were broken and leisurely turned on their sides. The mattress was full of holes. The bedsheet was dirty. Jonas couldn't believe his eyes. He started hitting the wall where the switch should have been, but instead, he felt only a hole. His heart began to beat faster. Panic was rising. He rushed to the phone next to the bed, but it didn't work. Moreover, it was covered in dust and cobwebs, as if no one had touched it for 20 years. The curtains were closed. He walked up and pulled them aside, but outside, he saw only boarded-up windows. A weak gray light slipped into the room through the cracks. Not understanding anything, he decided to leave the room, but the door wouldn't open. It felt like it was locked. Did I even lock the door before going to sleep? He thought. Fortunately, the lock was old, and on the third attempt, he broke the door open. The broken remains of the lock fell loudly onto the dusty floor. Stepping outside, he saw an empty, dusty corridor. Old rags, broken furniture were scattered everywhere. In some rooms, the doors were smashed. The carpet was torn and worn out. He ran down the stairs toward the reception, but on the way, he stumbled and fell. Some steps were razrushiny, and he lost his footing. Luckily, nothing broke. He stood up, brushed himself off, and more carefully, trying to control his emotions, ran downstairs. He reached the reception, but it looked no better than the rest of the hotel. The air smelled of age and rot. The desk was dusty. The monitors were broken. Old papers, faded with time, were scattered everywhere. The board, with all the keys, had rotted and fallen aside. The keys were rusted, the key tags broken. He was completely alone. He could hear only his breathing. His footsteps echoed through the empty building. From the main entrance, a faint light was coming in. Jonas ran outside. Before him was the city he had grown to love. Historical buildings on both sides, the park in front of the hotel, the Gothic church, and his yellow car. But there was one detail. Everything was dead, abandoned, empty. There was no life anywhere. Some buildings had collapsed walls, broken windows and doors. In the park, instead of green trees, there were bare, twisted trunks. The church roof had collapsed. The clock tower had fallen. His car was covered in rust. The tires were flat, windows broken, the steering wheel lying on the seat. His jacket, hanging there, tore apart as he touched it. "Did I sleep until the end of the world?" Jonas whispered, falling to his knees on cracked asphalt, thinking it was just a dream. He tried to wake up, pinching himself, but nothing worked. The same dead city remained. His breathing became uneven. His heart was pounding. His hands turned cold from fear. For several minutes, he sat there, trying to understand what had happened. Then suddenly, he remembered the book he never finished. Chapter 3. "Maybe I'll find answers there," he said, and stood up. He returned to room 120. The book was lying near the bed. Only now he noticed the smell, rot, dampness. The cold cut through him. He picked up the book, but many pages had no text. The paper was fragile, as if it would crumble into dust. Carefully turning pages, he found only fragments, words that somehow survived, as if something had spared them. Key, find, return, room 120, shock, loss, Elena, find the key, return it to reception. "That makes sense," he said. "But what about shock? And who is Elena?" Then he paused. The last 3 words, they describe what I felt. Yesterday, losing my job. That was the only clue. Wait, where is my key? I remember clearly. It was on the table. He closed his eyes and replayed the moment, standing by the window, the sound of keys, the turning of a lock. He opened his eyes. Why did Florian take the key and lock me in? Could he be involved? A crack interrupted his thoughts. Above him, the ceiling ornament started breaking. Pieces fell onto the bed. The crack spread. Dust filled the air. Jonas coughed. Time to get out, he thought, and ran. Downstairs, behind him, a loud crash. The ceiling collapsed. He ran faster, hoping nothing would hit him. The word Elena stayed in his mind. "That's my colleague," he said. "Maybe the answer is back where I came from." He walked through the dead city. Everything, gray, silent, empty, fear, despair, loneliness, followed him. Suddenly, a stone fell, hit the ground. He froze. Silence. Again, he exhaled and kept walking near a car. In an open trunk, he found a rusty wrench. Not knowing what awaited him, he took it, gripped it tightly, and walked toward his old hotel. The path took about an hour, alone, in a dead city. watching every shadow, waiting for something to appear. His heart was beating fast, and the feeling of anxiety in his chest didn't leave him for even a second. But the path was clear. Aside from fallen trees and broken cars, he saw no one. What felt strange was that he found no trace of people in this empty world. There wasn't a single body, no skeletons, no bloodstains. It was as if people had disappeared in a single moment. He didn't understand whether that should make him calmer or even more tense, but he still held the wrench ready. He reached the boutique hotel. This hotel looked even worse than the Bella Hotel. In the normal world, it had 7 floors, panoramic windows, modern design, expensive lights all over the building. But here, it looked worse than everything around it. Several floors had collapsed, balconies had fallen off, and now blocked the entrance. I need to stay alert. Getting hit by a brick is very possible here, Jonas said to himself. Something was pulling him inside, toward the reception. He knew he would find something there. After scanning the building and thinking about escape routes, he went inside. Once, this place was full of light. Guests were welcomed with smiles, given keys, told about the city, recommended restaurants. That atmosphere was always there. But now, the hotel looked like an old skeleton. The sight was ujasnaya. Rusty luggage carts stood by the entrance as if still waiting for guests. Vases with dried flowers hung lamps from broken wires. The marble floor was cracked with every step. He left footprints in the dust. He approached Antonio's office. The same office he had run from yesterday, with tears and pain. Inside, everything was destroyed by time. Papers lay on the floor, empty cigarette packs, rusty energy drink cans. Books had yellowed and crumbled at touch. Well, maybe I even like this place like this. He smiled. The pain, the anger felt reflected in this destruction. I wonder if the same thing happened to Elena, he thought. As he left the office, he stepped on a paper. Looking down, he saw his own signature. It was his termination paper. He kicked it aside and walked toward reception. As he approached, the air became heavier. Something was wrong. A faint smell, stale, barely noticeable. This place felt worse than anything else. Jonas swallowed and stepped forward. His throat tightened, his heart raced, his legs shook. Then he saw it, leaning against the wall, a skeleton in a hotel uniform, dark hair still on the skull, a name tag, Elena. It was his colleague, or what remained of her. The jaw was open, some teeth missing. He froze. He couldn't move. He might have disliked her, but never would he wish this. He wiped cold sweat, remembering the book. He knew he was in the right place, but something was missing. He saw only her left hand. He stepped over and looked at her right hand. She was holding the key, room 120, Bella Hotel, the same key he held earlier. The puzzle came together. Elena, key, return. He had to take it from her hand. It was unpleasant. Her fingers were stiff, like dry wood. Finally, he pulled the key free, turned away, but something changed. The lobby went silent, too silent. Then, a sound, bones, cracking, and suddenly, cold fingers grabbed his ankle. Dead hands, rough, unnaturally strong. Elena, he reacted instantly, adrenaline. In 1 second, he swung the wrench. First Udar, her hand shattered, bone broke into pieces. Second Udar, the skull cracked apart, breathing heavily, heart racing. He delivered the final blow. His foot smashed through her ribs into the wall. Cracks spread across it. He knew what would happen next. He dropped the wrench, jumped over the desk, and ran through the window, the one he noticed earlier. The building started collapsing. Jonas, screaming in pain, ran far enough away, making sure he was far enough. He turned around and saw how the boutique hotel was losing its form forever. The loud sound of the collapsing building echoed across the entire city. Dust from the collapse was catching up to him, and he ran as fast as he could from that sinister cloud. Reaching a safe distance, he turned again and looked where the hotel once stood. Now there was only a thick cloud of dirty dust, and the sound of cracking stone echoed through the streets. He stopped, breathing heavily, groaning from pain while escaping. He had injured his shoulder, broken glass. He pressed the wound with his hand. In the other hand, he held the key. Warm blood ran down his skin. Each step burned with pain, but he smiled. He was still alive, and he had the key. Room 120. "I know what I have to do now," he said firmly as he walked. He no longer felt the fear, the loneliness. Now he felt calm. Despite the wound, despite Elena rising from the dead, despite the destroyed hotel, there was no more anxiety, only one goal: to reach the reception of Bella Hotel. This time, the path took not an hour, but only 30 minutes. He walked fast, ignoring everything around him. The city was no longer silent. Echoes of destruction still moved through alleys. It had been very loud. Reaching the hotel, he smiled, looking at the lobby. "Even like this, I like you more than that hotel," he said. Going behind the desk, he noticed the fallen keys, room numbers 118, 119, 121. He was about to hang the key on hook 12. When suddenly, a loud sound rang out behind him. His heart dropped. The sound filled every corner. It was the clock, the same clock from the beginning. "Damn it," he growled and hung the key. A metallic sound echoed. Suddenly, everything went dark. A faint ringing. He opened his eyes. He was lying on the bed, confused. He jumped up, trying to understand. The ringing, it was the phone on the nightstand. Stunned, he picked up. "Good morning, Jonas. This is your 8 a.m. wake-up call. We're waiting for you at reception." A familiar voice. He went to the window, opened the curtains. Outside, sunlight, birds on the trees, people walking in the park, cars driving. Everything was normal. The phone on the nightstand, the book on the floor, open at chapter 3. He picked it up and read. Chapter 3, The Secret of Room 120. He went to the bathroom, looked at himself. Messy hair, disturbed was glad. Pain in his shoulder, the wound, still there, still dirty from dust. He washed it carefully with warm water, put on a shirt. The fabric turned red. He tried the door. It didn't open. Florian took the key. He remembered. He went back to call reception. But then he saw it, the key, on the sofa. He picked it up, stared at it. "I didn't put you here," he said. His mind was racing. Too many thoughts, hard to focus. Everything that happened was catching up silently. He walked to the door, opened it, went downstairs. Everything looked normal. Cleaning staff, working, rooms open, cleaning carts, sunlight, warm. He reached reception, holding his shoulder. Florian was there, smiling. Did you sleep well? Not really, Jonas said. Well, you know, first night in a new place is always restless. Florian nodded, then noticed the wound. He took antiseptic and bandages, gave them to Jonas. Jonas thanked him and went back to the room to treat his wounds. Call me when you're ready, Florian said. As he walked away, Jonas nodded and returned to his room. When everything was ready, he called the reception and asked Florian to come up a few minutes later. A knock on the door. He opened it, invited him in. Did you know this would happen to me? Jonas asked seriously. The manager smiled. As I said, this is a test, one that each of us went through before being hired here. And what did you see there? For everyone, that world looks different. As I understand it, our emotions, our thoughts, our inner state paint that world in the colors we see there. For me, it was red. Dangerous. Florian sat down. Before I got this job, I was in a car accident. I almost died. The taxi driver lost control and crashed into another car. I saw two bodies up close, and I'll never forget that image. What exactly you had to go through, I'll tell you someday, if you decide to work here. Silence filled the room for a few seconds. Then Jonas spoke. I have nowhere to live. I need to find a place to stay first. Florian nodded. We have staff rooms. We can give you one. While you look for an apartment, we can even help you find one. We have connections with real estate agents. Jonas smiled slightly. I hope nothing like last night happens in staff rooms. The man laughed. So far, no one has complained. That same day, Jonas signed the contract and was given a room. It was small, but enough. He started working. The next day, his colleagues accepted him warmly, quickly taught him everything. Within months, he became a full member of the team, someone they trusted, someone they relied on. Between guests, he talked with colleagues, laughed, joked. They had a lot in common, and one shared story, the test before joining Bella Hotel. Sometime later, the boutique hotel went bankrupt and closed. Jonas learned this from a colleague who lived nearby. Don't cry, Jonas, she joked. Bring tissues. I'm about to cry. He laughed. They knew what he had gone through and were glad. He joined them. One evening, working alone, a dark-haired woman entered the lobby. She called him, annoyed. I have a reservation. That voice he would recognize anywhere. Elena. He smiled, approached her, checked her in. She didn't recognize him, or pretended not to, but he recognized her perfectly. Your room is on the first floor, room 1-2. As he handed her the key, pain shot through his shoulder, the same place he had been injured. Their fingers touched. He flinched from the sharp pain. He gave her the key. She smirked. Is it that heavy that you can't even hand it properly? She said mockingly. Sleep well, Elena, he replied. Actually, you're not supposed to say room numbers out loud. What if someone hears and follows me? She said sarcastically. Sleep well. Jonas smiled and turned away. She scoffed and walked upstairs. After she left, he opened the book, the same book he had read 4 times already. He opened chapter 3 and read again about room 120, about strange events and people. Many went insane after one night. Some called it purgatory, for others, a path to nowhere. Everything depended on the person who stayed there. Eventually, Management closed room 120 forever. It was no longer available, and all rumors were denied. I hope you'll have the best night of your life, Elena, Jonas said quietly. Hearing another guest enter the lobby, he smiled and walked toward them. The story ends here. Write in the comments what you liked and what you didn't.